Oh, God. Okay. All right. I'm awake. I'm awake. It's been a long ride, but we we got there.
Terror no one could imagine.
Terrors of the past, terrors of the future, terrors yet to come.
Today we have something different, something quick, something spooky, something horrific in multiple ways. But today we have Belcourt's 12 Hours of Terror. If I had $1 for every time that I go on my social media platforms, of which I have very little exposure, and go and promote local businesses, whether they're food, whether they're theaters, whether they're artists and all that, I do it for free at this point. If I was born another life, I would have been a wonderful brand ambassador. I don't know why I do it. I guess spread awareness. I'm doing it for myself too. Having fun. Content. I don't know which one of you assholes didn't tell me about this, but apparently every year, the Belcourt Theater, they do an annual, something they call 12 Hours of Terror. So literally, and this is right up my alley, because as you can see, no life! This is my life. This is a girlfriend? No. This is aspirations and dreams and career paths? No, it's movies. But apparently, once a year during the spooky season, the Belcourt Theater has a 12-hour horror film marathon. 7, I think mostly staff chosen horror, slasher, could be body horror, could be sci-fi horror, the whole genre of the spectrum. I'm on the spectrum of horror in this case, and probably the real spectrum, honestly. You don't gotta stay for the whole thing, but you know me. Again, as we've established, no life. And I saw a challenge, and I was like, well, we gotta do this. And then at the end of it, I said, well, I made a promise that I would review every film I see in a theater. And there's 7 of them. I ain't about to do 7 reviews. Mainly because time constraints, but also some of these films don't deserve my fucking time for a review. I got better things to do than talk about a couple of these films for more than a couple minutes. Rapid fire quick review. This is gonna be it. I'm gonna go down the list, give the movie, the year it came out, and then give you a quick, very, very succinct review of it. But yeah, I'm excited to do this, so here we go. Number 1 was Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. So we started this thing off with a sequel to a movie and apparently a franchise I had never heard of. So sequel came out in 1987. Spoiler, all these films are pre-2000s. So yeah, it's basically like a girl who, she's not great, she's kind of a slut, and good for her, girl power, but she runs a dude at prom and cucks him basically, which some of us are into that. I couldn't possibly imagine who. The guy gets upsetty spaghetti and accidentally burns her alive at prom. So decades later, the curse is back, the spirit is awakened, and this Mary Lou gal starts possessing, starts killing and all this, and our heroes have to figure out how to survive, how to stop the curse and survive it all. Overall, yeah, so horror slasher, supernatural horror slasher, I'd say. It was funnier than it was scary. It wasn't bad. I had a fun time with it. Man, some of it didn't age well, but more people were laughing than were grossed out. I felt like there were some moments where there could have been some brutal kills, and they even queued up some potentially brutal kills, and then they just didn't do them, and they just had basic strangulations or off-screen stuff, and there's still blood. It wasn't too spooky. It was honestly, it was a fun slasher film. I'd watch it again. I thought it was pretty funny overall. It was funnier than it was scary, like I said. Overall, 3 out of 5. Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, 3 out of 5. It's average, especially given what we're about to get into next. Number 2, this guy described this film as the Jaws of the Australian outback. I would agree if Jaws was super fucking boring, which it's not, but this is. We had a film called Razorback that came out in 1984. Razorback has some promising things going for it, but unfortunately fails in execution on a lot of levels. I think Razorback cinematography is nice, it's good. There's a lot of really cool, visually interesting scenes, some stuff that's shot in a spooky manner, some stuff that's, I don't know, they got creative with the camera work. And this big old Razorback, what is it, a boar, I think? This mammoth, this freaking nature, rips through this guy's house, kills his son, and nobody believes him, and they think he murdered his son, but he doesn't get charged, so he's just a hunter off doing whatever. And these two news reporters that are covering kangaroo slaughtering in the area come into town. The woman gets killed. The other reporter guy just kind of fucks off and never comes back again. But then the husband of the woman, who is then killed by the Razorback, comes to try to find out what happened to her, finds out what it is, goes on this whole thing trying to get it, miraculously vanquishes it. That's all well and good, but so much of this movie is just nothing happens. It moves at a glacial pace, it's slow. I'm pretty sure, they say don't show your horror. They could have showed the horror a bit more with this boar. They could have had things going on faster, but instead we spend, 30 minutes of the film with the fucking dick guy and his brother and all this, and they're around here getting away with little murder. It's insane. They're a couple of fucking dickheads, they're idiots, they're murderous rapists, and we watch them get away with it all until the end when they both die in very unceremonious manners. Nothing in this film was satisfactory. It just went and went and went and then finally ended, and we all breathed a sigh of relief. But for what it has, I can't fault the performances. Everybody's working with what they got, no qualms there. The effects, when they are all mostly practical, especially when it comes to the boar and people getting killed, but there's not nearly enough of actually seeing people get ripped apart by this boar. I don't feel threatened by it. It's just kind of standing there or running around whenever it's involved. Just Razorback, 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5, and I'm only giving it that because the actors tried. The boar's practical, the sets and the scenery that's used to create these scenes it's practically done, and there is some nice cinematography. That's it. Don't waste your time. All right, we gotta go faster. This is running longer than I thought. Next up was one that I'd never heard of, but actually ended up really enjoying, Lord of Illusions. I'd never heard of this fucking movie. It came out in 1995, so just before old MovieMan was pooped out of the old front butt. We have Lord of Illusions. The whole thing is a world where it's like magicians that do illusions, but we have people that can actually do magic, and that stuff is terrifying. And then you have this guy, this grizzled, classic, hardboiled detective dragged into this because he has a quote-unquote nose for this stuff, and it's a whole conspiracy involving actual magic wielders, and one that was basically thought killed, thought dead, but only just buried with a curse or a hex. And so there's people that are trying to resurrect him, followers. It's very Charles Manson, that kind of cult deal. And this guy's stumbling through it, running into a love interest here, running into freaking Natchez over here, trying to kill him and all of this. Honestly, it was fun. It was quippy. There are some genuine moments of, not scary horror, but some moments of horror. It was pretty funny throughout. Again, these older horror movies crack us up, just can't be helped. The effects are all practical, spooky. Then some of that CGI doesn't quite hold up, but it was still fun. And by the end of it, I got some very heavy Event Horizon vibes, which I love. So that, kind of put me in my safe, happy place. Overall, Lord of Illusions was actually a really enjoyable movie. I would love to watch it again. I don't know how I never heard of it. It reminded me of a Tales from the Crypt episode. Lord of Illusions, a low 4 out of 5. A low 4 out of 5. It's up there, but, it has its faults. I'm not going to get too much into it. Performances maybe. The plot could have moved a bit faster. They could have made things tighter, just better quality. Some stuff is kind of hokey, but it's fun. It's fun, supernatural, cosmic, almost Thulian horror. So I'm here for it. This is a weird one, man, but you know what? I'll be damned if it wasn't pretty funny. I'd never heard of this. 1984's Strangler vs. Strangler. What an odd name. Never heard of it once again. And what an odd plot. This very portly gentleman who is, I think, French, is it? He lives with his mother, and he sells these carnations, these flowers to people, and then one too many people are like, no, flowers are stupid, and then he just snaps and just starts fucking strangling people. But I think he's simple, or he's too simple to really truly realize what he's doing, so he just kind of bumbles his way, gets away with it, and then from there, a detective, who's basically Jacques Clouseau, is trying to comically find who the strangler is and track this guy down, while this other rando guy, hears about the strangler and then ends up accidentally strangling his stepmom after choking on some shit, and then all of a sudden he decides to make music about the strangler. Plot gets kind of weird. I don't really give a shit It's barely verses. Like, it's not like one is strangling and the other is strangling. One is doing all the murdering and the other one is just singing about it and praising this guy and wishing he could be like him. A friend of mine that went with me to this basically said it best: by the third act, things get pretty tired. It's comical, it's funny, it's meant to be a dark comedy horror. It's not very bloody or gory, it's just dark and funny, kind of violent if you count strangulation as overtly violent. But I don't know, it was a fun watch, and given the right mood, maybe a couple drinks in me, I would see it again. I give it a low 3 out of 5. It's below average overall as the quality of a film, but it's unique enough where it fit in perfectly this marathon, and I would definitely be willing to revisit it again. Up next was one that made me actually I don't know if I was just sleep deprived or what, but it involuntarily made me shout "yeah" in the audience. But I mentioned the vibes of this film earlier, and then they were like, all right, we have cosmic horror sci-fi, and I was like, oh, cosmic horror sci-fi, I'm getting Event Horizon vibes again. There's no way they would do that one though. And sure enough, they were like, get your grab boots ready for Event Horizon. I was like, fucking yeah. I love Event Horizon, man. I remember, I don't even know how I did, but I stumbled across this film 7 years ago or something, and I've loved it ever since. A bunch of big names, surprisingly big names, are in this 1997 cosmic sci-fi horror. It's like Hellraiser meets Alien meets a mishmash other horror sci-fi. If I go see it again, I would love to do a full review of it. But all you gotta know is that the spaceship designed to basically like, oh, how are we going to get faster than light travel? It's impossible. No, this ship has a gravity drive that can bend space-time and cross through dimensions to get to where we got to go. And so the ship, the Event Horizon, is on its maiden voyage to try this out, and then boom, disappears. No, like, did it fail? Did it work? No idea. It's gone. Then 7 years later, boop, distress signal out of fucking nowhere, the Event Horizon. So the salvage ship is sent out. Again, alien vibes, right? You go out there, the ship seems abandoned, but then there's spooky stuff happening. So, you know what? Very Ghost Ship vibes, now that I think about it. But now you learn that basically the ship went somewhere, and went somewhere bad. Like, this is something beyond our realm of understanding, and that's when things get spooky and spine-tingly. Out of all the films on the list so far, even though I'd already seen this one, this film still gives me chills. There's still moments of like fear and tension. There's some very well executed jump scares in this, very good gore, fun acting, good acting. I think it's a fun watch if you're a fan of survival horror, cosmic, supernatural, crazy, batshit, horror, and you don't mind some blood and definitely some gore, then 100% check it out. This is right up my alley for a film. Event Horizon gets a very solid 4 out of 5 for me. It has its imperfections, but it's still 100%. If you like any of what I said and you're here for the same reasons I am, 100% worth it. Speaking of great horror films, we have the opposite coming up. There are fans of this film out there, and you know what? I can always play devil's advocate, and I understand why somebody would like this film. I get it. I fucking hated this shit for the most part, but we have one of the this might be my set a record for lowest score. One of the worst films I've ever seen. This is a German film that was shot on VHS by a guy who, from what the presenter said, couldn't get the funding on his own to make this, so he said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it with my VHS camera in 1992. We have this film, The Burning Moon. The plot you can find online is literally I think it's a sentence, something like a drug addict kid reads 2 bedtime stories of the damned to his little sister, because that's what it is. This little fucking shitty kid is a burnout, can't get a job, anything like that, goes home, argues with his parents. They're like, oh, we're fucking leaving, babysit your sister. He shoots up, trundles off to his sister's room, and is like, I have some stories for you, mine for all line. And then boom, we have our movie. The first one's not terrible. The first one's entertaining enough. It's shitty quality. I mean, the narrative holds it together enough, and then you have a fun little almost American Psycho thing type of deal where this psychopath goes on a date with this girl. She doesn't know that he's an escaped loony bin patient or whatever, and then she finds out. She runs home, but drops her wallet, so he follows her home, takes out her entire family, tortures her, and right as he's about to land the killing blow, gets comically killed himself. By the end of it, I mean, it was just brutal. It was violent, and I mean, it was kind of fun, a tiny bit, but mostly just crawled. And then I had one of the worst fucking... God, if this was a film by itself, I would say this didn't need to be made. I thought it was garbage. But the second story that follows is about this, like, priest who he rapes and... Like, it starts off, he literally rapes and murders a girl, then goes to church in the morning and gets away with it, and then, like, continues to murder people, then kills himself, and there's some, like... I don't know, some, I guess, satanic shit he was into, or some, like, otherworldly cult shit, where he was trying to help this one other guy that people at the church didn't like, and then the other people get a guy to kill this poor innocent guy, and one of the most long, drawn-out, literally watching it's like a snuff film, watching this guy get beaten to death on screen, and then there's a really fucked up, crazy, weird scene where the guy who committed the murder, all of a sudden he's like, I'm in pain, and then it cuts to like this post-apocalyptic, it's gotta be, I guess it's hell. It cuts to hell, basically, where all these people are like dying and cut open and bloody, and the guts are just being dragged around and all this shit, and this guy's put down on a table, and just everything is done to a fake body. Like, I mean, it was past the point of shock, because it was just like comically over the top. It's like literally like they like corkscrew out his eyeball, they like cut out parts of his face, they slice him open, take his guts out, they literally like drill through all of his teeth. It's all breaking his limbs and all this shit. They eventually rip him apart completely. I think it's just, and then it cuts back out and he's just screaming in pain in his living room, and the film just kind of ends. I guess it's meant to simulate that he's experiencing the pain and torture of hell, but my God. But getting up to that point is just like an utter 40 minutes of pure boredom and just so fucking shallow and pedantic and just boring and disgusting. I don't know, not even disgusting in that it's gory. It's just a fucking terrible film. Maybe I'm in the minority here, I don't know, but I hated this movie. I've never given a film like a 0 out of 5 because, I mean, that kind of seems, that's like, that wouldn't exist, right? But I don't know if this is the first film that I'll give this to, because I think this film's only redeeming factor is practical effects. And if anything, I'm a man of my word. Practical effects will always get you a point in these movies, and that's all this film has going for it. Burning Moon is a 1 out of fucking 5. Don't even Google it. Don't even look it up. You deserve so much more. But then we brought it back, kind of. We have what ended up being the last film, not of the night, because it was, I mean, this went from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m., so this was quite a journey. So probably closer to 8:30 in the morning, I guess, we would have started this one. We had the final film, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I appreciate the context in which this film was brought up. The woman who presented it said she had a connection with this film. Her father, who had passed away 2 years prior, he had gotten her out of school to go see this when it came out in theaters. There's a lot of films that mean a lot to me, whether they're good or not, that mean a lot to me because I watched that with somebody, or because I experienced it during a certain time in my life. I can always empathize highly with that, so I get that going into this. I've only ever seen the first Nightmare on Elm Street, truth be told. Never saw any of the sequels. I've seen plenty of clips from the sequels, like Dream Warriors. I've seen clips from that latest, whatever that weird, not Robert Englund monstrosity was. But yeah, this was the final that ended up not being the final because there was Freddy's New Nightmare, because people can't leave franchises alone. But yeah, this was Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. The whole plot was like, oh, this guy who survived the previous movies, he's the last survivor. Freddy's keeping him alive. Oh, I must be his son. But then he sends him off to go fetch something. You're like, what is this? And he winds up in a city, gets pulled into a fucking like foster care thing. The leader of the foster care system is like, oh, let's try to track down where you're from. So they go back to where the city where it all started, and then the kids that go with are killed in their dreams really quickly, in really funny, entertaining ways, but you barely get to know them before they get killed, so I can't really care about anybody. And then the big plot twist is that, oh, the woman who runs the foster system, that's Freddy's actual daughter. So the kid who thought he was blood of Freddy, Freddy was like, I was just using you, buddy, and fucking kills him. And then now that she, since he's killed and she's leaving, and the spirit of Freddy somehow then goes into her, kind of semi-possession wise, he can then leave that city and then go kill anywhere, because he's like,
every town has an Elm Street.
And then then it gets to a point where we got 3D glasses because part of the movie's in 3D because they figure out they got this dream therapy guy who works at the foster system who's like, oh, we can fight him. We'll go into his mind, and then since we can pull out, they pulled off like a piece of his sweater, so they're like, oh, we can pull him out. So they kind of pull him out, but he's only like halfway out, like he's still like half dream, half real life. Then just like stab the shit out of him and blow him up, and that's it. And then he's gone, but not really, because obviously they bring him back because franchise got a franchise. Is it a good movie? Not especially, but I was very entertained. Coming off of The Burning Moon, this was probably the best fucking palate cleanser I could have asked for. So maybe I got some bias there. But Freddy's Dead is funny, it's schlocky, it was very entertaining. The effects, for the most part, are good and practical. There's some weird CGI shit here and there, especially when we get to the dream world, but I think they were trying to capitalize on the big 3D boom, so I get that. Good for them for trying to be a little bit innovative. I didn't really give a shit about the characters. I think Freddy's funny and demented and dark, and he's supposed to be, so it wasn't really scary per se. It was just like dumb fun. And for all those reasons, you know what? I'm feeling generous. I think to end the night on Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare was worthy of a low 3 out of 5. It's below average, but I'd watch it again. I'd do a whole marathon of the Freddy movies. They seem like they're good fun. Oh, but that is it. That was 12 hours of terror. I happily, with my friends that came with me, almost all of them, we stayed through all of them from 10 p.m. one night to 10 a.m. in the morning. That was all 7. Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, Razorback, Lord of Illusions, Strangler vs. Strangler, Event Horizon, The Burning Moon, and Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Loved doing it. It was so much fun. Loved getting in a room with people that feel the same way about this shit as I do, and then just binge all this shit. Just knock out 7 movies, only one of which I had seen before. And yeah, I cannot wait to do it again in 2023. If I'm still here. That's all the time I got for today. I've used up my MovieMan minutes. So thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Thank you to the Belcourt and all the affiliated people with the Belcourt. I've been bringing them up more and more lately, but they really go above and beyond when it comes to the movies they help to host, what they try to promote for individual artists, indie films, the events that they do. See you guys in 2023 for the next 12 hours of terror. Yeah. And goodbye, travelers.